Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the season premiere of American Gods, The Bone Orchard, and I don't know how to feel about this show yet. Now, I kind of get the same feeling that I had when I watched Preacher the first time, though Preacher was much more chaotic. It's just there's certain variables that I don't know going into this. I haven't read the book or anything, but I am intrigued for where this is going to be going and what our overall arching plot's going to be. So the show starts out, and we see this guy writing this book about coming to America, about these Vikings that had come before the main Vikings that we hear of in history, like Leif the Red. And they're thinking, all right, we're getting all these plunder. They're the first ones to come to America. And it's yeah, and they're getting ready to go off and thinking about all the riches and women and everything that they'd have. And then one of their party gets full, chock frickin' full of arrows. And it gets to the point that they don't have any food and anything, and they want to go home, but the wind won't let them. So they build this effigy to Odin the Allfather, and it looks kind of like Ian McShane. And it's okay, we'll have to see where this is going. So they have the little effigy, try to get the wind and everything, and it's talking about how theirs is a god of war. And they're at first fighting a little bit, and then they offer their eyes because Odin offered his eye in the myth. And when they saw that was enough, they started pretty much fighting each other, and we get this giant bloody exchange. And I gotta tell you, dude, the frickin' blood and guts in this show, amazing. It's on a whole nother level. It's movie quality, kind of with the blood splashing. The cinematography is just great in those moments. And they're killing half of them, their party, and then the wind has come and they just sail home. They don't talk about it, they don't raid again, they just frickin', what? Yeah, we don't do that anymore, and I don't know what you're talking about, bro. So, that's them. And it's okay, this is interesting, and it's bringing up the point that it was probably harder for Odin to hear since they were farther from home. That's kind of an interesting concept for the gods, see what that's going to be doing. So then we see this guy in prison talking to this other guy about what it's like to be in prison, how it's almost a relief because you're not worried about getting caught anymore. And he's getting ready to go see his wife, Laura. And it's kind of interesting because he seems like an interesting main character because it's kind of where we shift the focus onto this guy, Shadow Moon, which is a pretty interesting name. So he was evidently in there for aggravated assault and all that kind of stuff, and he was about to get out on Friday. And of course they pull him in early, and it's okay, so your sentence was 6 years, and we were going to release you in 3 because of good behavior and everything on Friday, but we've gotten word that your wife has died, and we're going to let you out early so you can attend the funeral and all that stuff. And seeing his shocked face as he's going through all this, and the previous night we'd seen him trying to go to sleep and having this vision of his wife in the ceiling, and then having another vision of walking through this bone orchard because there's bones and everything, white trees, and he's going through and he finds this giant tree and he gets slashed by some of them, and we see this noose hanging on one of the trees. Okay, visions and everything, interesting mythology kind of stuff. We'll kind of see how this goes. So he gets out and he's trying to get his plane ticket changed, and of course he doesn't want to piss off the airport lady because his one dude was talking to him in there about how this one dude got out and screwed an airport woman, went right back to prison because of how being an ass he was, but it still brought home the point, don't mess with those airport ladies. So he's able to get his ticket to the next day, so he stays overnight. He's trying to contact his friend Robbie because that's the dude that he was going to have the job with, that he would get out. Pretty much a friend of his and his wife's, and he's having no luck with that. So it gets to the next day, and we see this old man trying to get a plane ticket to go to his grandchild's christening. And he's playing it pretty good, and Shadow's even watching okay. And he's able to get the woman to get him to a first class. It's oh, okay, interesting. And it fits in line with Odin because you see him as like this wanderer, drifter kind of dude, and that's part of his thing. And seeing how he's introduced like this is kind of interesting. And it's following the mythology and getting us into a good groove with how this is supposed to be going. So they get on the plane, and we find out that Shadow Moon, his seat's taken. So they figure out to put him on first class, right next to the gentleman who got his way into first class. And they start talking and everything, talking about how they know each other's cons and everything. You going for the sympathy con and everything, and they like introduce themselves. He's like, Shadow Moon, like, oh, mother was a hippie? Yep. And going in like that's a very improbable name, and just like the banter is really cool. He's like, all right, what's your name? He's like, what's today? Wednesday. Ah, my day. And of course, in Norse mythology, Wednesday is Woden Day, Odin Day. So it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And other little subtle hints that are dropped, like he can't see good out of one eye, and that there's two things that he gets. He can sleep anywhere, kind of referencing the Odin sleep that he would have to take every so often to recharge himself, and that he usually gets what he wants because he had offered a job to him, and that it was legal and everything, but he'd have a pension, he'd be a king of America. He's like, dude, okay, I've already got my friend lined up with a job and everything, and it's like, okay. He's like, don't have to rush into it, and then he immediately goes to sleep. Then we see him kind of getting out, and he'd have to wait for his plane and all that. And he's like, well, how far away is Eagle Point? And then he just rents a car and starts going. While this is going on, we also see this scene going on with this guy going into this bar. And he's there to meet this lady from the internet and talking how his kids got him talked him into it, and just to get him out and everything. And she takes him back and into this really interesting room. Now, it's just interesting because of like how it's kind of set up and everything. It's not your typical kind of room. There's like care taken into it. So they start getting down to it, and the guy's kind of like hesitant. He's like, listen, I do want to see you again and everything, and we don't have to rush into this. And then they start going at it, and we find out that her name is Bilquist, and that she wants him to worship her and everything. So, okay, and then they start really going at it and like, give me everything. And he starts talking in a way that doesn't seem like it's himself. He's like, oh, and then at points he'll go back to his own kind of speech, like, oh, this is great and everything. And then it gets to the point where I don't know truly how to describe it. It's like she absorbs him into her body that way, like while they're having intercourse. It's really strange, and since I'm not up to her mythology or whatnot, I don't know what kind of ritual part or what her kind of like sacrifices that she was, because she just essentially ate a dude through sex. It was like, okay, that's interesting. And there was some kind of change that went on for her. It's like, okay, what's this supposed to... I'm waiting for, like, context and everything. We don't really get it this episode, but, like, that's a definitely intriguing way to introduce a character and, like that. So then we get going on a little bit more into what was going on with Shadow, because he had another vision about the same tree, and this buffalo with flaming eyes came up and told him to believe, because one of the points of conversation was about like faith, and how the people have either faith that the plane will fly or faith in Newton that the plane would fly. And it was kind of an interesting kind of parallel to like how we as humans believe in certain things, if we take it on faith or if we take it on evidence, because even Shadow Moon had talked about in the beginning how he really doesn't believe something unless he sees it, though he's been feeling this axe over his head. Even though he can't see it, he believes it. So he gets into this bar, and we find out that Mr. Wednesday is there. And he's still going on about the job offer, and he's kind of pissed off. He's like, I'm sorry about your wife and everything, but your friend's also dead as well. And look through the obituary, and both of them are dead, which is kind of strange. So, of course, he's like, all right, I will take your job if this comes up heads. And he flips it, and he's like, ah, I tricked you. It'll always come up tails. He's like, oh, you should check it. Comes up for heads with me. He's like, I'll go get us a drink so we can work out the details. And he's like, flipping it, and it's still coming up heads, and he's like, oh, you do coin tricks too. And this other dude comes up, and he's like, oh, you working with him yet? He's like, no, who are you? What are you? I'm a leprechaun. He's like, aren't you supposed to be short? Now that's a stereotype. What, you're from Ireland as well? It's like, well, I'm not from Moscow. And it was just like, the way he was delivering it and everything was pretty interesting. So then we get down to the details of, like, what is going on with this deal. And he's like, all right, I'll take your job. And I want 2,000 a week. And I don't want to do anything illegal. I was like, all right, you'll be my aide-de-camp, like Castellan. You'll, like, do the things that I need you to do, errand boy kind of stuff. But, like, if I die, you'll hold vigil for me and all that kind of stuff. And he had brought 3 shots to seal this. And he takes the first shot. He's like, oh, God, what is this? This tastes like prison juice. Oh, it's stranger than that, stronger than that. Honey meat. The drink of heroes, the drink of God. It's like, okay. And it's like, second was to seal it. Third one's for charm. And then he takes them back and everything, and they kind of all got worked out. And then we see the leprechaun dude starting to do all these kind of coin tricks with all this gold, and it's really freaking him out. And he's like, show me how you do that. He's like, fight me. Win, and I'll show you. And then he doesn't really want to fight him, but then he eggs him on with his dead wife and hit him on that. And then it starts this bloody brawl. And it was actually a pretty good fight scene. And just seeing the two characters and, like, what kind of motivates them. We don't know that much about the leprechaun guy yet, but we know with Shadow Moon that he doesn't really want to be a con. He knows all these tricks and everything, but he wants to stay out of prison. And of course, he's also got a breaking point, and of course, this is the pretty worst time to, like, hit him on his dead wife. But then he goes at that dude and evidently wakes up in this black Cadillac that Mr. Wednesday's driving. He's like, oh, don't worry, this will be your car. I left your car. Red's not your color, man. You'll be driving Betty here. And it's like, okay, did I win? Yeah, he did teach you the trick. And it's like, do you remember it? And just asking about that. So they get there to Eagle Point, which Crossroads of America is on one of the signs. And Mr. Wednesday's like, I'm going to tell you this once. Take all the time you need for this. It's like, wow, that's pretty good and pretty generous. So he gets there, gets to his wife's funeral, and we find out that Bobby's wife is there as well, and kind of needling him about what's going on. And he's like, not right now. And he finds out that his wife was cheating on him with Robbie. And to be put bluntly by the wife, that they died with her mouth on his cock and all that kind of stuff. It's like, holy shit. And then just seeing him kind of go through the rest of it and seeing just Shadow kind of like dealing with all of it and seeing all the weird stuff that was going on. Like when they were trying to load the coffin, it didn't work right. And he's just there and he flips the coin onto the grave, which has some importance. And then, of course, Robbie's wife comes and says, she's, of course, really angry, upset, I think kind of drunk as well. She said she pissed on her husband's grave and wants to either blow Shadow right now or have sex with him right now to piss them off to get even. And he's like, no, I'm sorry. And they just kind of like hug it out and whatnot. And while this is going on, we see that the gold coin sinks into the grave. It's like, okay. So we see Shadow is walking down a road, and then we see the lights all shut off and come back on. And we see this kind of weird cube sphere thing off in the distance on the side of the road. He goes over to it, it transforms, and it shoots onto his head, and he's taken in this kind of like vehicle kind of place. And this weird kind of douchey dude is like asking him questions about what's he doing for Wednesday. And all that. He's like, nothing at the moment. What's his game plan? He's like, I don't know. And then he's like having his children or whatnot beat on him at certain points. And then He's like, okay, whatever. Sorry to hear about your wife. He's like, thanks. It's really weird. It's like, okay. And he's saying all these technical things and everything that like realities be reprogrammed and that they're the new dominant paradigm and all that. And he's like, you wouldn't tell me even if you knew what his plans were you? No. And then he's like, alright, delete him. And then all these children things like pop up and like he's thrown out. And it was just a really interesting scene because it was going so fast with the one douche guy, like blowing smoke and everything, synthetic toad skin and all that. And he seems to be some kind of tech god, I believe. And talking about like language and prayers of spam and all that and deletion and all that. I don't know exactly what kind of aspect of tech he is, but it's an interesting way to kind of shift everybody's like perception of technology, of putting it almost on a worship level for what we do, almost taking for granted what it is and understanding it more as a magic or a deity doing it rather than us being able to do it with our own hands and create it, and that we have made it rather that something else has made it and taken on a life of its own. That's kind of a cool thing. So we see that he's like a fast talker, wants to know what's going on, because evidently what Mr. Wednesday's plans would probably negatively affect him. So they're like beating the crap out of Shadow Moon and pretty much use a noose and hang him up there. And then out of nowhere, we see like this red spray. And at first I thought it was raining blood or whatnot. But then we find out that someone cuts the noose and is like destroying these children in just like bloody efficiency. And it's like, holy shit. And of course Shadow Moon's kind of freaking out. And that's kind of where it ends. So I'm intrigued to see where this is going and how the mythology is tied in and what goes on with it. But I'm still left in a place of like, I've got a lot more questions than answers at this point. I don't need all the answers, but I'm kind of like, what's going on here? And I'm just like, there's a lot to be thrown off at once, but I think it was a pretty good starting episode to kind of pull you in and be like, this is kind of our world at the moment. We're going to explain the things later on, but here's where we're at. And I'm like, okay, fight scenes are going to be pretty interesting. The blood and like effects are going to be great because of the gore that they were able to do and how the cinematography around it is going to be going on. I'm just really, I'm wondering what's going to be happening with this, and I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.